Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm Nathan Garrett coming at you from Zwift Community Live, and this is the weekly wind-up, a show that we do now starting again every week, where we talk about whatever is going on out on Zwift. Today, I do have guest host alongside of myself and the mad scientist himself, Greg Leo, Nicola Cramner. Nicola, she's coming out of Tucson, Arizona with us today. Nicola is the owner and manager of presented by Shower 2020 Pro Racing Team, Women's Pro Racing Team. Welcome to the program, Nicola.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is awesome to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. And of course we have, I've coined him the mad scientist with the sun there next to him, Greg Leo with Team Turbo as well as Independence Podcast. Greg, welcome to the program.
Nathan, you're a little rusty on your tagline there at the beginning. I think we need to make sure we get this in every week so we can get that nice and polished. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Thanks a lot for the amazing criticism. I really appreciate it. As always, everybody, if you're out there watching in the world of social medias, Twitch, YouTube, wherever it might be, we do have social media integration. Lionel Viasen, who is somewhat well known, I would think, Zwift racer, is already helping us out in that regard. So if you do want to interact, you can interact specifically the Facebook and feed and Twitter. You can @Z Community Live, and we will be able to see that in our social media integration. We'll bring in your chatter over there. Now, super important that you do that if you want to be heard. Also, the reality is that we've got a lot of topics that the community has been super passionate about in chatting about, and we want to make sure we get your opinions. We're also going to be polling you. Greg, what is this poll that you wanted to bring in to the program? I think
I didn't even know we were going to talk about that. We need to figure out what we call someone who is their primary thing is racing on Zwift. You know, Nate, so Adam Zimmerman and I used to call these people indoor specialists. But that's a little too, how should we say it? It's a little too vague, right? There's no word about cycling or anything in there. So my proposal is esports cyclist. But we can see what the audience thinks. We can see what Nicola thinks. What do you think, Nathan? What do you think we should call someone whose primary discipline is racing on Zwift?
I thought about this question and was like, I could not, because you're trying to name a new cycling genre.
Kind of. I mean, so giving something a name.
Digital cyclist?
Maybe.
Or like something along the lines that I think has the E, but maybe not just straight esports. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a little bit too niche because there is a reality that esports is a part of gaming, but it's not the whole of it. And a lot of people just do the gaming. Now, we're already going on into one of our topics from way later today.
Oh, yeah.
But real quick, all right.
Well, let's just get this out there. Let's get this.
Go ahead, Greg.
We'll just got to get this. We got to get this into the mind of the community and get people thinking about it. We don't need to decide right now and today. We just need to decide at some point.
100% with you there. All right. So the topic that is on constantly coming up, nonstop, obviously. I think everybody's going to know what it is. Can anybody guess in chat right now? Right from the get-go, but it is esports. That's what the whole, at least it feels like the last 6 months or so of Zwift, and some of the updates that we've seen recently, maybe not so much about esports as a product, esports as, what it's all the dreams about what's going to be, but also just kind of seeing some of the updates starting to be more about racing and those kind of events. Obviously, those of you that might not know, we had one of the largest esport events this past winter/spring with the UK National Championships. Here's a quick look back at what happened there.
Tonight is the night. This is a first. We are live here at the BT Sports Studios in London for the British Cycling Swift e-Racing Championships. This will be amazing. Trust me, we have 2 live races for you, one for the women and one for the men, and they will come fully loaded with speed and drama. So what is this event and how does it work? I hear you ask. Don't worry, I got you tonight. and they are off. This is the big final.
Mary Wilkinson, though, trying to come across. Can she come across against Sarah Farah? We've got a national championship on the line. She has to do it right now.
They are gasping for breath on the limit.
Can it be closed down? 1,001. James Phillips, this did have the line to look like for the win in this race, but Cam Jeffers, I think, just won a national championship. So esports has been obviously a big one. Now, I just want to quick from our guests here, Greg, Nicola, we'll go with Greg first, real quick. Background with the esports, obviously, for those, the program's just getting going again here. And for those that might not be familiar, what is your involvement and what did you think of this past season?
Yeah, so my involvement with esports is, I'm coming from the community. I've been a racer on Zwift for several years now and competed in several live events, including some hosted by Zwift and some hosted by other governing bodies, you might say. I'm kind of just involved with the community as the moderator of the Zwift Racers group. I have a Zwift racing podcast called In the Pens. And I do some work with Zwift on sort of designing the governance around esports. So I think that encompasses a little bit of everything I work on.
So a lot of involvement in the background, obviously racing though the crit series, and being invited to live finals for the North America the year prior. So a lot of background in that space. How did you think things went this past season or, spring/winter?
Yeah, I mean, things definitely accelerated extremely quickly from where we were last year. Last year we had the Kiss Crit finals, we had the CVR World Cup, and it was a lot. It was definitely seemed like more community driven kind of racing. This year Zwift really stepped in and started kind of accelerating the pace of esports. We saw the Kiss Super League, which was an incredible event. Tons of pros coming in and racing on Zwift. It was very exciting. And then the British Nationals, which was really the highlight for me. I mean, because of the interesting format of the race, but also the polish of the production itself. I think that was definitely the highlight for me this year was that British Nationals race. And what I really liked about it was, there were pros there at that race, some guys from Madison Genesis, but, a lot of the racers there were just community racers, people who've been racing on Zwift for a long time and sort of worked their way up through the ranks, qualified for that race. And then, one of them won a British cycling jersey, which was super cool. So for me, that was really the highlight of the year. And I hope that, we see more of that kind of thing in the future.
Yeah, we definitely have two different spaces here, I think, where you have this qualification space that you're talking about there with national championships. And that was really cool to see where the community had a chance to jump in and be the fastest Zwifter in the world for their nation, essentially, right?
Exactly.
Who knows down the road, world championships, there's just who is the fastest Zwifter with this genre. You have national championships. The next question is those kinds of things. Now, I think there's another space, though, where we have like this curated racing a little bit, where it's like we select, high-end community teams, and they get invitations like we see in Dota International Esports or CSGO, and then they get some qualification from the community, but you definitely have these people get invited, they have the points or the caliber, and the only place we've been able to really select from right now with that is the pro ranks in real-life cycling. Right. So I think that's where we, are looking with Show Air 2020 and their involvement. Nicola, what have you seen so far? What's your experience so far? How you think things have gone, and how did you get involved in this whole world of Zwift racing?
Yeah, it was interesting. I got an email from Charlie over at Zwift and inviting us to take part in this Super League series. And first of all, I looked at the email. I'm like, oh, there's no way. I'm already like so to the max in running a women's team, and how are we going to fit in something else? But the more I looked into it, and I talked to a couple of my athletes that already train on Zwift regularly, And I just thought, well, you know what, let's give it a shot. And so we're really very new to esports, and we took part in the Super League, the Swift Kids Super League, and we emerged as the top UCI team. We won a few races and podiumed a lot, and our athletes adapted really quickly. It wasn't just, I mean, we have some, you know, amazing athletes on our team, including Olympic medalists and world champions and, you know, world record holders, just phenomenal athletes. And that power didn't necessarily directly just transfer over. There was a lot to learn, and, you know, our team just adapted very quickly. I got on Reddit. I was looking for forums, like, how do we do this? I mean, it was literally like, how do we do this? And, you know, we quickly learned about that legendary Zwift start, where you're basically going max power at the line, and off you go. So the whole series was incredible for us. We got a lot of traction on social media. We actually just drew in a different kind of fan base, some esports fans, and just a different crowd. The recreational community group of Zwift has connected with the team. So it's been nothing but super positive for us.
Awesome. Yeah, and let's real quick take a look back then at your participation, you know, in, well, there's a quick little highlight video we have here of the KISS Super League for the women's side of things, as well as then get some more ideas about what 2020 is all about to here. But here's how things ended up. You'll see those orange numbers popping, quads locking now as they get out on course. Leah Dixon coming through with 8 watts per kilogram, but it's going to be Wilkinson still leading up, and here comes the All-Star. Dixon to the line. Dixon looks like she's going to do it. First time ever.
Top 3 teams in the overall series are first, Zwift All-Stars, second, Show Air 2020, and third, the Zwift Academy Dream Team.
So, I mean, interesting there that, like you said, the power transfer over. You know, these were not live events, all of them. We did see the final last one there in Belgium, which was pretty amazing.
Yep.
We saw you there, and you know, taking second place. You said, what's your take now on Zwift racing then, and like pros getting involved then within this whole, like, it feels like there's this whole new space where there's like really strong riders, like, whoa, riders who showed up live on site with verified power, and they don't have pro licenses, and now they're mixing it up with your pros. What's the thoughts that come to your mind around that? You know, and what's the experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I look at this platform as nothing but pure opportunity for women's cycling, and, you know, to see the pro-am mix to me is really critical. It's, for me personally, who does a lot of the recruiting for the program, it just gives me a broader base of athlete to choose from instead of looking within the pro ranks already. We do have a junior team, and we've developed a lot of juniors into our pro ranks, but it was great, and hats off to all those community members, because, you know, they know what's up. I mean, we came into the game, like I said, with some very accomplished athletes, and they showed us how it was done. I mean, we have to continue to do our homework and to get better and continue to, you know, keep riding the Zwift community races, even just to gain experience. It's a different kind of racing.
Yeah, and it's no joke athletes that you're bringing to the table here. I mean, I'm seeing some of the bullet points we're looking through here. 6 athletes poised for Tokyo Olympics. I mean,
yeah,
you know, and I think having other women that are out there, I did notice, I couldn't help but notice live in Belgium, you chatting with some of the community member women. And I think about that talent identification that might be taking place there, and, you know, opportunities that go across genres, you know, because it sounds like up front with Zwift, it was like, oh, this is an opportunity for talent identification for pro racing out in the real world. But it sounds like it's kind of going both ways a little bit now, as the reality of esports and Zwift racing becomes its own genre, where, well, maybe, you know, I race cyclocross and MTB, and then I maybe transfer over to the road for part of a season. And there's a lot of opportunity then for the athletes on the professional business side of things as well, for them to do some crossover. Like, is there talent identification going both ways then, I guess, is what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've already always been a multidisciplined program, which presents its own challenges when you've got athletes that race UCI track world championships, but they're also focused on the road as well. And we've had a cyclocross program, and we now have a mountain bike program as well. Um, we're definitely going to have an esports team. Well, we really already are one, and we've participated, and we're continuing to participate in the upcoming Zwift Classics, which starts July 3rd with the London International. And, we're going to field a team of 5 athletes there. But yeah, I mean, I look to those community athletes, and, I have the long discussion of, do you want to be a UCI rider racing stage races in Europe? Do you want to be an esports racer? Do you want to do both? And how is that going to work? I mean, we're still figuring out. It's also new. We're just still figuring out how do we do all of this, and working closely with Zwift and identifying, huge gaps in the North American race calendar, the outside race calendar. I think that there's a big opportunity to plug in some, esports racing between those national calendar races, and the athletes can then, have a great schedule.
That is something there. Opportunities for women. I think you said opportunities in general, which I think is one
Yeah,
thing, because there is a
yeah,
reality of being able to just from your home jump on. You get in with the mad scientist over here and his rule sets, and or what the ones that he's working on with Zwift. Game theory guy over here who anybody doesn't know, Greg is a professor of game theory and has helped a lot with the e-racing rules a lot. And um, making sure that things are verified is of course always going to be a question. I could just anticipate some chatter around that in chat, but there's that opportunity for everybody. But it sounds like for you, opportunities for women specifically though is obviously a high priority in everything you're doing prior to this, but now it's like, is there a new nugget to crack open there?
right. Zwift being so new just has the perfect opportunity to be, gender equal, and create that platform right from the start. Even our own governing body, the UCI, is not insisting upon that still. And so I'm in full support of a company that can present that to athletes. I think the coverage of the racing has been phenomenal. The exciting commentary, the data driven commentary, which is what all athletes look at and are about these days, is just a really exciting component. I think it's bringing in new potential sponsors that haven't been involved in cycling before. It's just a different platform, and I think there's more of a tangible return on investment with media impressions, which women's cycling typically doesn't have. So I see that as being the biggest opportunity, is actually the media part of it.
Right on. Awesome. Yeah. So very cool opportunities, obviously all around, but also specifically for women with a new platform. Maybe get in on the front end too, as it's been dominated for a very long time with men's racing. So having maybe somewhere where it could be like both raising up at the same time would be kind of cool.
Exactly.
So furthering our esports discussion, we're talking about pro racing and the community. This is Greg. I think somewhere we could bring you in as far as like,
Yeah.
where do you see? You were mentioning maybe this little bit of a tension where we're bringing in professional racers amongst the community racers, and it's like this whole grassroots thing. I mean, the first ZTR or early bird races in 2016 that we're broadcasting on the Nathan Guerra channel, and then Zwift Community Live launches a little while later, and we've got like 700 videos of community racing. You know what I mean? Like, and that was all happening prior to any professional involvement in a business sense whatsoever. Like, they would show up and just race in a community race for training, but we had this ranking system, SwiftPower.com, and I get the sense that you're like, some of the community is like, hey, what are you doing? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the community felt like maybe even up until last season, we were kind of like driving and creating like a kind of like a new sport, which is, sort of what Eric Min says. But we were in the community felt like we were in the driver's seat. Like we were developing all the things. I mean, Zwift Power, Zwift Community Live, those are community driven projects, right? And now they're so important in Zwift racing. And I feel like some of the community has this sense that the pros are going to come in and take over, and then we're just going to be relegated to races no one cares about, right? We're not in the driver's seat anymore. We're not crafting this new sport, and sort of like we were the ones in at the ground floor driving this. And I think there's a lot of aversion around that, around pros coming in and sort of taking over and taking all the attention away from the community events and the community driven projects.
Yeah, gotcha. So do you think that, I mean, so there's a reality though of if this is going to become its own genre and the benefits though. Do you think that there's, I mean, I think you're playing a little bit of devil's advocate, and do you see the other side of it though, where like there are these benefits if it can come together in the right way, where it creates its own genre, has its own ranking system, has its own like way that people can come up, maybe even a better way than we currently see, because you see so much frustration. And maybe I'm going to go over to Nicola here on this. There's a reality of a lot of frustration to become a professional cyclist within all the other genres already. And maybe there's, like we said about opportunity here, and that the community doesn't maybe need to be reacting like that if we have a way where it's not so curated and it's more democratic maybe in the way that we find the pros and the ways that we find this talent and the way they come up through, from Cat 5 to Cat 1. And then after that, it's like, do you get paid or not? You know what I mean? After that, it's pro license, right? After that, it's like, what's happening? And being able to have, I think there'll be more transparency, hopefully, I would hope, about how all the business is going down to get there, Nicola. So do you see that as an advantage rather than like the community versus the pros, and that Zwift needs to really like manage that well so that it is democratic?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see definitely more of the pro-am category. I think that, there's plenty of athletes out there that are indoor racers that are capable of racing against the UCI athletes. It's interesting though, because I wouldn't necessarily be in support of community athletes wanting to be pro bike racers. It's not a very sustainable lifestyle for most. It's definitely good to have your goals and to be able to race up against some of the best athletes in the world, I think is awesome. But to want to be a pro cyclist, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a tough life. And, but this platform is great for the pro-am.
Yeah, for sure. So
yeah,
go ahead, Greg.
What I was going to say is, I think it's, I think one thing the community is not averse to is having, pros come in and just try their hand at Zwift racing, like we saw with the British national championship, right? Those guys qualified, the guys from Madison Genesis qualified just like everyone else, just because they're passionate about Zwift. They know the game. They came in, learned the ropes, and, qualified for the final, and then competed there with, the community racers. I think it's more about like what you were saying, Nathan, earlier, which was a good point. These curated races where it's only the pro teams being invited, and maybe a little, a few community teams like the Super League. I think those are the kind of things that the community is more averse to, having the pros come and take over and just leave a very small slice of the pie for the community. Where I think the community wants what Nicola is saying, like pro teams create their own esports teams. Those esports teams come and compete on the same playing field with the rest of the community members in what becomes sort of a new discipline, rather than taking, the discipline that already exists in road racing and professional road racing and sort of taking that in and planting it on in Zwift racing. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Go, Nicola, did you have something to say to that?
No, I completely agree with Greg. I think that, the UCI teams going over to the community platform rather than the other way around just makes sense and feels right. Just from my perspective, I mean, the team's been around for 15 years and this is a completely new platform to me. And I understand there's been people that have been racing and creating this sport for us to participate in. And it only feels right to support the community.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, I think chat seems to agree. Anson Brooks letting us say the well said. Andrew Williams coming in saying Z Sports. Andy Ball giving a shout out, kind of, to Kofidis. I think that might be a little tongue in cheek happening there on some specific things around
Hey,
the
one thing
Kiss
I
Super
noticed,
League.
Nathan, during when Nicola was just talking now, she said she used the phrase indoor racer. Did you notice that? So she gave us another option there for
Another
what we
option.
call these
We're
people with
polling the community,
with Swift
everybody.
racing goals.
Yeah,
We're
that's
polling the
not a
community today.
glamorous option.
No, it's not. It's not a good one.
No.
But look, that was your that was the phrase you naturally used.
So,
Yeah, I know, right?
the just so you guys know what they're talking about, if you weren't here at the beginning of the program, we are polling the community. Let us know what you think the indoor cycling genre, indoor cycling, or the athletes
Esports
that are
cycling.
part of the indoor cycling genre. Indoor cyclists, indoor specialists have been thrown around. What do you think that they should be called? Because we have a new genre here: track racer, mountain biker. You have road racer. Zwift racer? I mean, but Zwift then owns the whole of it, and that's a company. It's
Right.
not a genre.
Mhm.
So we're
Using
looking
the
for
E
what
word.
you think.
Yeah, using the E word is tricky because e-racer,
The E word.
when I was talking about esports recently, they were like, oh, you race on e-bikes. I'm like, no. So that can be
An
confusing.
eraser is what you use to remove pencil marks from a piece of paper, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, a little bit of community chatter. We're gonna move chatter, and then we're gonna move on to pie in the sky dreaming and actions about people are taking, Zwift's taking, that people can take. But a little bit of community chatter here. Carissa here, obviously well known. Calm down, Carissa, is her hashtag, I think, in everything. She's one of the admins amongst a lot of the community groups out there for Facebook. Says, I really appreciated Show Air embraced the Super League. It was a thrill watching them fighting it out with the community teams. We've got a couple other things here. This is on to a topic we're going to be on in just a moment. Coming over from Twitch, Cycling to Lose. Says, I'm loving the new stuff. If races or organizers don't like them, then they have the option to not include them in their races. And that's going to be probably about the new power-ups as well as the HeT Mode that just launched here in the last 24 hours, actually. So we'll be on that a little bit. People obviously enjoying also the spotlights for women out there. Zal's coming in with some many opinions about equipment. We'll probably talk about that in another broadcast in a week or two. Maybe get Mr. Shane Miller on board with this. But if you do have any questions, again, everybody, or comments, you can go ahead and see right above the comment there. Go ahead and make a question or comment specifically on the topics that we are covering in the feed on Facebook or tweet, or mention it over on YouTube or on Twitch, and we'll be able to bring that right on in. So on esports, then let's close this out a little bit here. There's a new rule set, Greg. Just mention that real quick, Greg. I don't want to go too far into that just because we have a lot.
Yeah, we don't need to. I mean,
cover.
Maybe people are interested. Zwift put out the rule set that will be used in the race that Nicola mentioned, the Zwift Classics coming up. It'll probably govern just the races that Zwift puts on as e-racing events. So this is the very specialized kind of these top tier elite events. If you're interested, you can find these rules over at zwift.com/p/eracing rules. There's also a link posted up on the Zwift Racers Facebook. And, there's not really that much new here. I think it just kind of codifies and sort of clarifies, stuff that Zwift has used in the past for governance as far as, in the Super League or in the national championship race, and sort of puts it all in one place and makes it very clear what procedures Zwift will use to verify riders and things like that. And from what I can see, the community response has been pretty positive. Even, sometimes the most critical, or should I say the biggest Zwift critics out there, I won't mention who exactly, had very little criticism about what Zwift put out here. So it seems like a pretty big step forward as far as e-racing goes, and the community's sort of perspective on e-racing.
Just a quick mention, dual power source. That was a big one for me, seeing that with the classics. for extra verification?
It's not required. It's
Okay.
encouraged, but not required, right? So the idea is that if you record your power on two sources, let's say you have your smart trainer reporting power to Zwift, but you're also recording the power put out by the power meter that might be on your bike. That'll sort of streamline the verification procedure, and that stuff seems to be mentioned in the rules. So that is encouraged in the rule set.
Yeah, verification obviously being a big one. It seems like around all that. So
I mean, it's the biggest obstacle we have right now, sort of as in terms of legitimizing esports racing or e-racing, as a sport. The idea of verification and riders producing power that is real is really the biggest obstacle. So I think this is a big step in that direction.
So just a quick general comment then about what I'm seeing there, at least, and then I'll come to Nicola and what she's thinking about rules and things like that. But before it was like general racing, community racing, and feels like anything goes. And there'll be a flyer. We got to DQ them somehow. I'm watching the broadcast and I'm just trying to ignore that guy and just focus on everybody else or whatever it might be. And then it was like, or go to a LAN event, or go to a live event where people weigh in and all this stuff. It feels like as the stakes go up in the racing, we're starting to implement these new levels that can still be virtual, right? So like the rule sets then start getting involved more. So there's still going to be community racing. Just so everybody knows, I think a lot of times people have this like very reflexive, you know what I mean, knee-jerk reaction that's just like, whoa, okay, it's this or that, you know what I mean? And I think like what I hear is that, I hear a lot of times from the community, it'll never be this and that, about how it'll never be verified. Virtual racing's always be not able to do things, but it sounds like steps are being taken that, yes, at the just jump in and have fun racing level, yes, you might always have a flyer, but now that these rules and regulations are starting to get put in place, you're starting to have more hurdles and more verification, and the stakes go up, the more involved you want to get, and the more prestige, maybe prizes, more that's on the line, even in the virtual spaces. These rule sets are helping to bring that kind of tiered racing into this whole Zwift scene. Great, go ahead real quick on that.
I think that's exactly it. These aren't going to govern community races, and in fact, Zwift just released a small revision to the rule set that sort of clarifies this. This isn't about governing community races. Community races, there's always going to be races you can jump into with low stress on whatever equipment you might have, not worry about whether it's, perfectly accurate or, everything's just right. But this is about creating restrictions at the very highest levels, right? So there can still be this kind of open, fun racing just for everyone. But, as you move up towards that, those elite levels of racing, there has to be more and more restrictions on what can be used and things like that.
Nicola, your take on rules, regulations, and how important it is.
Yeah, I think, like you said, when the stakes are high and they're getting higher, and by the way, it was pretty awesome that our athletes could be in the comfort of their own home and win $5,000 on their trainers, and pretty amazing. And it was interesting because up to this point, and probably sort of just the last year or two, most professional athletes have been really secretive about their personal data, their training data. And so when we first started taking part in the Super League and we were asked to do the verified weigh-in on video, some of the girls were a little freaked out about it because women typically are freaked out about their weight anyway. And then they had to video it, and then they had to produce their power files after the races. And the first time that happened, and we weren't given a heads up about it, my athletes called me like, oh my God, they want my Training Peaks access. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And, but they've since been coached on that and understand that, this is just how it needs to be. I mean, whenever you have sport, any kind of sport, people like to cheat. And the word out there is that the prize money is just going to keep going up in some of these events, and people will find a way. So verification is critical. It's really key in this whole process.
Yeah, 100%. I'm
Definitely.
really liking to see the steps. I sat in a couple of the rule set meetings, and it's being taken seriously. Like it's really, and there's definitely steps being taken in the background, especially for the curated races, the races that have specific invites, races that are being put on by Zwift specifically. I'm really liking to see the tiers that are starting to happen there, similar to what I see in the other esports with the Face It series or the PUBG series that they specifically put on. There's a higher barrier to entry so that we don't have this cheating. I've said it a million times before. This is nothing new. It's been rampant in esports from the get-go. It's more rampant than in cycling. I know cyclists have the bad name out there of doping and all this stuff, but the reality is it's a lot easier to cheat on a computer than to put things in your bloodstream. And so like this isn't a new problem, everybody, and we've got a very thriving esports space in the gaming community. So it can be handled and barriers can be put in, and people still get caught even today though too. So all right, and last thing then, a little bit of dreaming real quick. What, as far as esports go, I'm gonna go to Greg first. Like,
all right.
Something, just 1 or 2 points about like something you'd really like to see developed. You know what I mean? Something that you think would be awesome in the next 6 months to a year that we'd like to see in this space with the esports and cycling.
Yeah. Ooh, 6 months to a year. That's tough. Let me ignore your question and answer the question about what I'd like to see in like 2 to 3 years, let's say.
Okay.
And that is, I'd love to see more live events, like kind of like a system where riders are qualifying at live events at the regional level and then the national level, leading up to international events. This year we saw the British Cycling Championship. You've mentioned it before. I'd love to see a world championship, where we're getting people from the community, we're getting pro racers coming onto the platform and trying out for this, qualifying at, regional or even maybe local live events, right? So maybe initially doing some stuff virtually, qualifying for regional live finals, winning that, moving on to a national event, and then winning that, and maybe moving on to an international event. I'd love to see, live events organized on that level. Because I think it's really important to have the live aspect of it, because right now it's still the case that our biggest obstacle is verification, and live events are kind of the gold standard for that. So I'd love to see more live events organized and that kind of system.
Right on. Nicola, what are you thinking? Where are things going, and how would you see like actions being taken to get there?
Yeah, well, just bouncing off of Greg a little bit, the live like arena racing, I think I would love to see. It's funny you asked the dream question. I'm not really much of a dreamer because I'm too busy to dream. That might be quite sad, but it's true. I'm so busy doing and not dreaming.
Well, there is something. I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Then there is something that you're doing that I didn't have in the notes that we were going to cover, but that you put in the notes, something kind of cool that's happening in Tucson. And I think that's along the lines of next actions, maybe a little bit. Maybe you want to mention that.
Yeah, that's one of my next actions. So I have two partners, Pam Alexander and Maury Holden, and we purchased a property in Tucson, Arizona, and we're creating, that's why I'm not there this morning, because there were jackhammers, an endurance facility. But the difference being, well, first of all, there's not really any in the US that are built around creating curated groups that come together like a team or just a group of friends, even, that have a facility where they can train out on the roads of Tucson or the trails or the gravel, and then we're going to have a Zwift setup in there as well. So our goal is to actually have some crossover Zwift endurance camps, so you can actually come and train inside and outside. And I think this is pretty groundbreaking, and it brings all of my worlds into one place. And that that is actually a reality and not a dream anymore. We move quickly. And yeah, so we should be up and running by September. And it's going to be interesting to see how it just pans out. And, you know, we hope to do some live streaming from there and create some great content. And that's not just for UCI athletes. So
Yeah,
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, Nicola, I think one thing that compares to then in the esports world are these team esports camps or houses even where they all live in the same space so that they can continually train and get their
Yes.
tactics right. That sounds.
Exactly.
I heard that you were talking about having a streaming setup there too as well. So
Yes.
you're starting to
Yes.
create this crossover of the team house that we have in the esports world, right? The gaming house that we have
Yep.
in the esports world that also has a streaming setup, and they can do things along the lines of esports and their genre of gaming / cycling, and see benefit for the team
Yes.
for it as well as individuals too.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, one of the things that we haven't talked about, but I just want to touch on is just the health and wellness of these athletes that are now, you know, in the esports gaming world, but also in the Zwift world with the extra screen time. I mean, yes, they're using their physical bodies, but there's you know, a lot of mention right now about just the challenges with the blue light, and you know, there's a lot of things that athletes can do to stay healthy while participating in esports. I think it's something that has to be addressed as we move and just sort of migrate towards a lot more of this sort of electronic sports. And we'll have recovery facilities at this house.
Nice.
Hey Nathan, one thing I want to say is that you know, it's been in the past that live events have always been sort of organized by, you know, either Zwift or, you know, a large organization. Maybe with the exception of uh, the Belgian Zwift Racers live event. But you know, like just like in esports and in gaming, like, you know, a couple buddies could get together at a local bike shop, bring their trainers, and do a live event there, right? I mean, like there's plenty of room for very easy grassroots. It's like it's not hard to set up a streaming rig at a you know, at a bike shop, right? It doesn't have to be big production. You know, I think it would be pretty cool for more and more people just to get together and Zwift. So, you know, I have a friend here, and you know, we're going to be racing in his basement, you know, coming this winter. And I think it's just so it's cool to get together and do that, right? And stream and do these live events. It gets you a little piece of what it's like to attend, you know, one of these big live races, and you can do it very easily and very cheaply. We all own trainers. It's not that hard to move them around. You know, I'd like to see more and more of that happen at the grassroots level as well.
I think the reality of grassroots events is how the esports started to begin with, and that verification and local leagues. It's the same thing. We were NICA is in the notes. We're not going there, but the reality of the national, you know, Interscholastic Cycling Association and the waves of youth that are being introduced to a new sport, you know, a new generation for cycling was the tagline of Vision Cycling, you know, and then I saw the nonprofit / team that I was a part of to grow cycling specifically, and the reality of NICA and what they were doing and the localities. If we have local Zwift live events that are developed by the community, verification is no problem. I mean, Zwift parties should just be something that is like on Zwift's, in my opinion, Zwift's like to-do list localities, and then the local places are getting benefit because they're putting on events that people are coming to. If they can make it attractive and cool. Whole other topic, another
let's
weekly
table that
wind up.
for another
Let's
show.
move on
Would be
because
cool.
there was an update.
We have a lot.
Need to get
a
to.
lot to talk
Yeah,
about.
I on my dreaming, product side, gamification and good gamification. That moves us on to the updates. All right, so because we had a recent update, and whether or not it's aiming in the good or not so good or awesome ways. So HeT Mode came out recently, well, in the last 24 hours. Let's take a couple looks at some of the images here that we were provided. It looks like we have a starting pens with rows starting. You have individual times, is what it looks like for each one of those rows, or each one of those rows. This is what a start looks like. Looks like Jordan Rapp was being used as one of the individuals that are a part of the promo here. But then it looks like climbing up the Zwift. Your time is at the top there. A little bit different there at the top of the screen, it looks like, for what the metrics are going to be. A little more metrics, it looks like, than you usually get. On the left-hand side, you see average heart rates, it looks like, for this section, and it's split into different sections there, as well as on the lower right, you can see the time gaps, but everyone starts separately. So I'm going to do a quick little read through here of the release notes that I got.
I think there can be, sometimes people will start at the same time, right? So it's like staggered starts. But if in a large enough event, there might be like 5 riders leaving at one time. So it's not going to be mass start. In a small enough event, I think it could be that each individual starts separately. But you get your time, and you might be starting with a few others, but it's not going to be a big mass start, right? Because they want everyone to start within 30 minutes of each other. So for a very large race, they're just going to have some people starting together.
Yeah, so from what I'm seeing there, it says you'll see event date and time on schedule, and after joining it, you'll be given a start time within 30 minutes of the advertised start time. At the start of each race, you'll see riders on a conveyor belt that we see here on the screen right now. Each rider is given a row horizontal pursuit staggered by 1 second intervals, but the front to back stagger will vary based on the event. So it's always going to be a little staggered, it looks like. As the timer counts down, red hollow fence will drop for the first starters. Once it drops, it's full gas. Riders will hit the yellow pad right out of the gate, speeding them up to 20 miles per hour, just like a ramp in real life. So you get a kick right from the get-go rather than trying, and everybody's equalized then with the speed. Zwift HeT Mode will have checkpoints, time splits. Times and splits. Splits are placed by age group and gender, actually, too. Within the HUD, you'll see leaderboards, how you're performing against the clock. You also see the course and the elevation map, which I think is pretty cool. So it really brings this, like, your race into, you know what I mean? Because look at the difference here on screen. This is you're owning your solo race in a lot of ways. Yes, it's against these other people. What's your best time? Greg, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, I really like this. Like, I like the idea of now having, really, before it was all the same game experience, right? And we would race or we would ride or we would do a group ride, but everything looked the same, right? I really like this idea of specializing the look to the particular event, right? To make it more, more the information you need or whatever it is, right? And I hope this is leading up to, getting more and more specialized game modes, more and more gamified modes where what we see is different, the experience is different, the racing is different, and it's more unique than outside. There's one other point I want to bring up, and that is this little ramp at the beginning that shoots people off. I don't know if this has been brought up elsewhere, but people always talk about, like, how do we get rid of this super fast start in Zwift racing and regular races? And I'm not necessarily for getting rid of that. I think it's just part of racing. But I think just putting this ramp at the beginning of a mass start race would actually help a lot in doing that, right? If you just shoot everyone up to 20 miles an hour or even 30 miles an hour, it's really going to reduce the need to to ramp it up into zone 6 before you start the race. So it would be interesting if Zwift implemented that little yellow turbo. That's the name of my team. That little yellow acceleration thing at the bottom there for mass start races.
Nicola, what are you thinking of the new TT mode? Pretty cool. And then the Girona, obviously, and all that. The Giro.
Yeah,
the Giro.
Yep, I think it's excellent. We're all about the time trial on our team. It is the race of truth. It's the race against the clock. It's you, and there's a lot of tangibility to time trialing. We've been very successful at developing world-class time trialers on our team, and I just love that there's another option, and I already am feeling the time trial camp in Tucson. So I think it's awesome. And going back to Greg's point about the Zwift starts, I think those super fast, mega fast starts are really a fun aspect of Zwift racing. I think it gets everybody amped up. Our girls get super nervous when we're communicating at the start of a race. You know, they're on their trainers in their living rooms at home, and they're like, "Oh my god, I'm so nervous! I'm so nervous!" I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so funny." Um, but yeah, I mean, it's this is going to be great. I can't wait for them to try it.
Yep. So TT mode looking really cool. You guys that didn't know, you can download a new Zwift
Definitely.
update today. Just launched in the last 24 hours or so, and it's looking really cool. I can't wait to try one of the events. Now, the more gamification side of things. Interesting situation. New power-ups. What is this guy?
New
Are we playing?
power-ups.
Are we playing Pac-Man? What is going on here?
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
What is happening here? Chat, is this Pac-Man? Let me know, chat. What is going on here? Greg, speak to this power-up.
Oh, the power-up, the invisibility power-up. You know, this is coming straight from Mario Kart. Although the one thing that we don't get here that you do get in Mario Kart is in Mario Kart, when you go invisible, which this power-up does, you also steal the weapon of another rider. You don't get that here, but you do go invisible. You know, there are some interesting potential tactics for this in racing, right? So you might go invisible and attack off the front. You might go invisible to make people think you're attacking off the front. But one problem I have with this invisibility power-up is that sometimes in races, even before we had this power-up, people would go invisible either because it was unintentional, like their internet dropped out, or it was intentional that they pulled the plug on their internet to go invisible and use the same tactics they would use here. So this power-up has actually existed. It's just been against the rules to use it for a long time. People were pulling the LAN cord out of their computer to disconnect from the internet, go invisible, plug it back in before the finish line, and show up again. Fortunately, James Hodges, put some code into Zwift Power so we can detect when people do this. But the problem is going to be, now with this power-up, how will we know in race, or like, let's say when Nathan is doing some commentary, whether someone has disappeared because they're using the power-up or because they've had an internet dropout? This is going to be the biggest thing with this power-up. I really do. I want to say, I really do like the potential tactics of going invisible. This is really gamified, right? So people asking for gamification, right? Like, the arrow helmet and the feather and the draft, those are sort of just slight gamifications. This is like something, unlike anything that happens in the real world. I've never been on a group ride, I don't know about you, where someone just disappears and then reappears later on, right? This just doesn't happen. So there are definitely some interesting aspects of this. It'll be interesting to see how it works in races and what people do with it. So I really like it on one hand, and then I really dislike some of the implications of it on the other hand.
Reaction, Nicola. Invisibility power-up.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, in outdoor crit racing, I have seen people disappear and then reappear a couple of laps later. Like, what the heck? I think it's great. Bring it on. I mean, this is a new sport. This is a new opportunity. This is not outside racing. This is different. I'm all for it. And, it keeps our athletes engaged. It keeps them constantly learning. A lot of our athletes are students anyway in college while they're being professional racers. And, their minds are switched on. And, this is good. This is engagement.
Yeah. All right, so my take, quick, is I'm going to go to the gaming world. And this, for me, is like a pickup game kind of thing. This is not serious racing. This isn't necessarily, this isn't esport to me. This is gamey. If I'm jumping into Overwatch, quick play, or a version that's for fun competition, that's my take, but not super serious. My take on more esport development would be like a little bit of tweak to how much power is amongst a group that has something to do with like what real cycling is like a little bit, but is in the game where everybody can gain advantages that people work harder toward what is actually cycling. How do we express what is actually cycling? What do we express what is actually our job in the roles we play within a team, and emphasize those with what we can do in the digital world, right? Maybe we need to get away from the gamification word because we get things like disappearing, like Mario Kart. Mario Kart does not have a very big esports, like they're not the biggest esport like at all, because they're like, you have silly things where you can just lose the race because somebody got a red turtle shell. It's like, well, that isn't a competitive thing. That's a fun thing. And oh, dang, I lost because of a red turtle shell or an invisibility power up, right? We need to emphasize the competitive and the grind that comes with training, the grind comes with getting better with a skill set, rather, in my opinion, than fun things. Now, this is cool. Have it in the community races, turn it on and off, right on, you know, like have all kinds of stuff like this to make Zwifting fun, because that's why people Zwift, to make their indoor training fun. But I see that as a Zwift product and not so much an esports product as far as the invisibility power up goes. Go ahead, Greg. I feel like you really want to say something right now.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, going back to like the original discussions we had the first time I was ever on Zwift Community Live. You know, the idea with these things is we want to expand the strategy set, right? We want to expand the possible kinds of strategies players can implement when they're racing in interesting ways, right? And we want to do that without creating undue RNG, random number games, right? We don't want people to be losing races because they got bad luck. We want people to be winning races because they had a better and more like elegant strategy than someone else, right? And also because they were able to produce more power, right? That should be the idea. That should be where we go with power ups, right? And your idea of classes is good. Again, this is something we could totally talk about for an hour on another show. But I'm definitely all behind what you were saying just now.
All right, let's switch over to not necessarily new, but we're not going to change the title. The burrito. It's new to a lot of people. It hasn't been around for a long time. What's going on here, Greg?
All right, so the burrito makes it so you can't be drafted, right? So your draft effect is neutralized for its duration. The strategy here might be something like, when I'm in a two-up situation near the end of a race, and I think I'm going to lose the sprint, what I'm going to do is try to drop the rider behind me. So I'm going to attack, and that rider's just going to try to sit on my wheel and conserve as much energy as possible for the sprint, right? By using the burrito power up, when I attack now, that rider who's trying to follow me is not going to get the benefit of sitting behind me and is going to have to put out just as much effort as me. So there's probably, I think this is more of, I think this creates interesting gameplay, especially in these small group situations. This is going to create some interesting strategic scenarios, and especially how it matches up with other power-ups maybe. Like, how does this match up when I have a burrito and I know my opponent has a arrow helmet or something like that, right? Like it starts to create these kind of interesting matchups in power-ups that could be interesting in the future.
I think that the burrito needs to be maybe even a deterrent to make it a little stronger. Like you can't you don't draft, but actually anyone who's behind you goes slower. They just get pushed off.
This is
like
this is the first defensive power up. Every other power up affects only you, right? The arrow, the feather, and the truck, they only affect you. This is the only power up we have that affects other people right now. So we're starting to get into this realm of offensive and defensive power ups, which is kind of interesting.
Nicola, what are you thinking here on the burrito? I mean, the inability to draft for a while, a little bit more down the esports side, gamification, somewhere in the middle. Like what's your take on the new power up? And then also a follow up on that. Is there a power up that you've thought of that you'd like to see in game too?
Oh boy.
I know, I'm just throwing that out there. Totally on the spot.
Yeah. The burrito. Well, I like the concept. I think when you're trying to throw down an attack to set one of your teammates up behind, I think it's all good. It can be used. This is my first time learning about the burrito. So yeah, I mean, more the merrier, I say.
Yeah, more the merrier. I'm with you there. I think right now, the more additions that we have to see if it's good or not, and then let it go, is where we need to be right now for sure. I mean, think more and more and more and more and more. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
One thing real quick, Nathan, is something we're kind of overlooking in these new things, just because it's so focal that we're getting new power-ups, is how is this going to affect the distribution of the other power-ups, right? Is this going to take away the chance that I get an arrow helmet? Right? Like if the probability of an arrow helmet is now reduced to 10% or 5%, that changes racing immensely, because that increases the RNG things, right? So that's something we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see what the new distributions are once these things go live.
Really, really good point there, actually, on that. Let's go to a little bit of community chatter before we close things out here. We have a lot of it. I mean, we had a lot to cover today. I'm sorry to those. We got lot of chatter here. Want to make sure that we get to some of it here. We're seeing Dafford Williams up in here, one of the old school racers, that's for sure, over on Twitch, saying that the invisibility needs to counter. We're also seeing some new opinions here. Line of Yasin saying that the way that the invisibility needs to be is a little bit different as well. I mean, there's a whole lot of opinions. I mean, as soon as we started talking about power-ups, everybody is like going crazy about this. Raymond is seeing power-ups are getting more and more ridiculous, but that's okay, as we have enough big groups for both Mario Kart-esque and real races. And it sounds like Raymond is down the same path that we were talking about a moment ago, that like, hey, we've got, a couple different kind of spaces here. Straight PvP, super competitive is one thing, but on the other side of things, we can also have a little bit more fun. So good to see everybody in the chat here. Lots of bad ideas we're seeing from Alexander, saying he's not liking it one bit, as it seems like he's not so much for gamification. So hopefully the organizers here from Gino saying that be able to turn power-ups on and off for races, which I guess that's definitely something that is out there. So you do not have to have it in the races.
I think he's saying specific ones. I think he's saying he'd like to see the organizers be able to select from the menu of power-ups that are available in the races.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's either power-ups on or off right now. Is that right, Greg?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how these new power-ups will work. I don't know if the Ghost is event only, or only certain events. I'm not exactly sure, but I guess that's something we'll have to see, right? But I think what Gino's saying is, like, it would be nice if organizers could say, okay, in this particular race, it's only helmets, like we saw, only aero helmets, kind of like we saw in the latest Tour of Watopia. There was that one stage where it was just aero helmets. You got one every lap, right? So maybe that's something that race promoters want to do, or maybe it's just the aero helmet and the Ghost or something like that, right? But not all on or off.
So Adrian Timmis was saying that the burrito sounds like attacking a crossway and putting someone in the gutter. I think that's exactly the idea they're going to. I think that's why we need it almost to be a deterrent more, and not just not drafting, but actually pushes people off. Mayfield, we're seeing from Aaron over on YouTube that the organizer can control which ones are active. So I believe that is a thing. I do believe that is a thing.
Cool.
So, all right, we have been on for over an hour. So we have been long-winded, as we usually are. In closing, I'm going to go to Nicola first. What's up next in your world of all things racing and Zwift? What's coming up?
Yeah, well, we have the Pro National Championships next week in Knoxville, Tennessee, and that's road race, criterium, and time trial. So we'll have a big squad there. Right now, we have our juniors racing in Hagerstown. It's Junior National Championships. And then right after Pro Nationals, we've got the Zwift Classic London International on July 3rd, which will be fielding 5 racers. Yeah,
awesome. So a lot going on in real life, a lot going on Zwift still. It's obviously not just a winter thing. And very cool to see the involvements of the pros at the highest level, Olympic athletes that hopefuls that are getting involved. And good luck at the races though, in both, actually.
Thank you.
That is 2020 at Team 20, spelled out 20, and then 20. That's on Instagram. Also, I believe on Twitter,
Facebook.
And Facebook. So, Greg, what's up with you next? What's happening?
Ooh, well, in the pens, the Zwift Racing podcast is back. In fact, we're going to be pushing the audio from these weekly windups to the in the pens. So that's our old logo. We'll have to we'll get the new logo in there. So in the pens is coming back. We've got some, like I said, we're gonna push the audio from the weekly windup to the in the pens channel. But there'll also be new audio content, interviews, race course previews, tips and tricks, all the usual stuff from In the Pens. So the podcast is coming back. You can find us over on Facebook at In the Pens, a Zwift Racing podcast. Also on inthepens.com, you can find the audio feed. We'll push this out there after that. And for me, I guess the next thing is Racing Zwift Classics with Team Turbo. That's the new team here. This is our logo, or part of our logo. Pretty excited about that. I don't think many people know about Team Turbo, but it's actually a pretty solid squad. So I'm looking forward to racing with the guys and watching our incredible women's team race as well.
Yeah, the underground out of nowhere. Where did you come from on the start line team with Turbo? That's for sure. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the program, Greg, as well. And next up Greg's mad scientist. He's here all the time. Hopefully Nicola as well. We'll see how things go there. But next up for me, I think, obviously, if you guys don't know, the SRAM Send It series, as well as the Chop is going on, everybody. We'll be covering that on Zwift Live and Zwift Community Live. So if you haven't signed up for those and you can get up at that hour, it's serving mainly the Australia market. We will be coming at you live with more community racing as well throughout the week. So watch out for that at what we like to call prime time, or the UK evening, to hit all the time zones. So be watching out for more live streaming of races. Zwift Classic has been mentioned as well, so be watching out for those. And then if you didn't know, Zwift Community Live has a website, ZwiftCommunityLive.com. All things Zwift Community Live you can find there. Recently had an update, a little bit of construction, but you'll be able to find all the live streams there, or YouTube or socials, chat, all kinds of stuff. So make sure to check that out. We'll definitely be up with indoor hairspray reviews as well, as Greg is chatting about here.
That's my hairspray reviews channel.
That's the has nothing to do with the program at all. Maybe we need some Milo. Don't go on the lava as well here. But all right, that's going to be it from us. Thanks you guys for jumping in the program. Appreciate all of your input.
Thank you. Bye.
And that's going to be it from me as well, you guys. And if you haven't done so, everybody out there, hit that follow button, share it up. It helps out the channel a ton. And as always, everybody, thanks for viewing and all the chatter that's out there in the community. We'll see you. This is the end of the June 21st Zwift Community Live weekly wind-up. We'll see you next week for another episode of this, as well as all things Zwift next week, starting on Tuesday. As always, everybody, ride on.